Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast with Andrew McCutchen, the 2013 National League MVP and outfielder for the Philadelphia Phillies, is brought to you by Compassion International. It's been great to have Compassion as a sponsor here on the podcast, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. Over 66 years of experience, Compassion has found the most effective way to care for children in need is through the local church, and they partner with more than 7,000 local churches in 25 countries to deliver God's love and care to children in need, one child at a time. And today, more than 2 million children are breaking the cycle of poverty for good, and it starts through Compassion, but because of you and I sponsoring a child. $38 a month, food, education, medical care, safe housing, safe water, vocational training, all of that comes with that $38 sponsorship and an opportunity for you and I to focus on releasing a child from poverty. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum, compassion.com/sportspectrum, and sponsor a child today. Today on the podcast, we talk to the National League MVP from 2013 and one of the newest members of the Philadelphia Phillies. Andrew McCutchen is our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Of course, you know Cutch if you're a baseball fan, five-time All-Star, that 2013 National League MVP during his time with the Pirates, 2012 Gold Glove winner and four-time Silver Slugger award winner. Played his first 9 seasons in baseball with the Pirates and then was traded to the San Francisco Giants at the beginning of 2018 and then traded again in August of 2018 to the New York Yankees. Kind of a crazy 2018 for Cutch. And then at the end of 2018, December 12th to be exact, Andrew signed a 3-year contract with the Philadelphia Phillies, which is where he is right now, and that team looks loaded. Guys like JT Realmuto, David Robertson, Gene Segura, and of course, Bryce Harper now with the Phillies. That team has a lot of talent and a lot of expectations for good things to happen this year in the city of Philadelphia with regards to its baseball team. And Andrew McCutchen is right at the center of that. Even today, as we're taping this, he had a spring training game and was leading off for Philadelphia. So lots to be excited about in 2019. And it was great to catch up with Cutch and talk about becoming a Philadelphia Philly and how his faith has helped him throughout his baseball career. Andrew McCutchen, Philadelphia Phillies outfielder, 2013 National League MVP, is our guest here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Let's take a listen. Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
All right. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's good to talk to you, Cutch. And I was actually at your first spring training game in 2019 in Clearwater back in late February. It was against your former team, the Pirates, ironically. And it was our first glimpse of seeing you in that Phillies uniform in a game. What was that like, putting on that uniform? And what's it been? What's the transition been like for you since you got over to the Phillies?
You know, it's been great. It's been a good transition. I've been enjoying myself. I always joke with people. I said, "Man, you know, red has always been my favorite color." So, you know, to put it on, you know, feel like I look pretty good in it. So, you know, as far as the transition, there really hasn't been much of one. You know, I feel like last year was more of a transition for me because it was new to me. But I guess I feel like I'm a little used to it now, and so yeah, everything feels pretty normal, and yeah, good just getting out on the field and playing again.
Yeah, and the Phillies look like they mean business with these signings, obviously, and bringing yourself and certainly Bryce being the big, huge name there, and the additions of guys like Realmuto and David Robertson, Gene Segura. Talent everywhere, it seems like, with this team. It has to have you pretty excited for 2019, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I didn't know the direction the team was going in, but, you know, I knew that what this team did last year. I knew what they were capable of doing this year, and I had me excited about it. And that was one of the reasons that led me to sign it. So I was excited when I signed, and then, you know, they added a few other guys, JT and Robertson and then Harper came along. Segura was before me. So, it's an exciting team, and, we're definitely looking forward to this year. Everyone's excited. We know what we're capable of doing. And, yeah, we're excited to just produce out there and win some ball games.
You mentioned last year and how kind of different that was for you, having been with the Pirates for so many years. What was 2018 like for you? When you look at that entire year, you start the year by being traded to San Francisco, then traded again to the Yankees, and then at the end of last year, you signed, like we just mentioned, with Philadelphia. What was 2018 like for you, and how, maybe even talk about it from a faith perspective on how I can imagine the Lord is you're probably looking at him like, what are you doing here, God? What was that year like for you?
It was an experience. It was a roller coaster of emotions for me. Especially it started that off season in 2017. Me not knowing what was going to happen, going into the future. Then, first the birth of our child, our son, still, and just learning just how to be a new parent and how to adjust to that, and knowing our lives have changed for the better. And then, not too much longer down the road, being traded and trying to figure out, what do we do from here? What do we go next? What are we going to do with like our son and traveling? And, there was so much stuff that went along with it to where, it was new experiences for us. And, it was definitely an experience. It was something that, it was tough at times for us, but we leaned on God, we leaned on our relationship with Him, and man, He helped us, just move on and move forward and enjoy every moment that we had.
This being a Faith in Sports podcast, obviously at Sports Spectrum, Andrew McCutchen's our guest here on the show. Can you share your testimony a little bit? Tell us about your walk with the Lord and how that took shape for you over the years.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I grew up in a family who, we were faith-based. I grew up in the church. Every day I was in the church. When I moved to my hometown and we had a house and settled in Fort Meade, Florida, where I'm from. We lived literally right across the street from our church, and then we went from there. That's what it was all about. Our lives evolved around the church. It evolved around God. Our life was based upon that. So I learned that at a very young age, how important having a relationship with God is. And then, they told me, it'd be my decision when I wanted to have that relationship with God and want to go deeper. And I did that at the age of 16. I got baptized at 16. And, I just went to, get to know God more on a personal level. And I continue to keep learning. I continue to, get deeper. It's a relationship, and we all know how it is. We know how it is when we have a relationship. If we're married, that takes work. It's not just something that, you learn over time. You learn tomorrow. You learn every single day. And that's how it is, with my relationship, my walk with God, too, the same way. And, just trying to dig deeper every single day, honestly.
What does that faith look like for you as a professional player? And you've been in the league now over a decade. So what has that been like? I know there's baseball chapel and there's certainly Bible studies and even the PAO conference that our parent company puts on each year, and you've been a part of that. What's that like, though, on a day-to-day basis, trying to stay grounded in your faith, and how does that work for you during a long baseball season?
You know what? There's something I've really come to realize and learn that you need an accountability partner. You need someone to hold you accountable throughout a season. You're away from your family so much. You're by yourself a lot. That can become hard. And sometimes throughout the year and throughout the season, temptations are there, whatever that it may be. There's just a lot of things that's accessible and easily, that's given to you. And so for me, I've started to learn, having an accountability partner, having with that teammate, that friend that we can hold each other accountable. That's what we did. That's, like last year, me and Derek Holland, we became really close. And, we used to get our rooms right next to each other on the road. So we used to open our door, and basically his door was open and my door was open. And, basically it was just open door policy, you know, like if you ever need to come to my room and talk or vice versa, that's what we did. But that's something that helped me big time in knowing that I'm not in this thing alone and that, you know, I have other people that I can lean on. So that's something that I've definitely learned over the years. I think it's really important to have.
We talked about you being in this game for a long time now, almost a decade. You've been around. It'll be 10 years on June 4th, 2009, that you made your Major League Baseball debut. We like to ask baseball players on the podcast when we talk to them about what they remember about that first game. What is your memory of your first Major League Baseball game?
Man, it's crazy. It's crazy the things that you can remember. I remember everything about that day. Stepping on the field for the first time, running out there. Basically saying, man, I'm living a dream, you know, right now. It's something that I've always looked forward to my whole life, and now I'm here. I remember that day, man. It was 12:35 game. I was leading off. Mike Pelfrey was the pitcher. We're playing against the New York Mets. You know, geez, man, it was an amazing day, man. And I remember it first at bat, leading off the inning when we came up to bat, and first two pitches, I was 0-2 right away. You know, strike one, strike two, and I felt like I had just took a breath, and I was like, man, I'm already 0-2, and yeah, he threw me a fastball middle in. I hit it back up the middle, and I could just remember being like, man, you know, my first at bat, I got a hit, and yeah, man, it's history from there, but. Yeah, it was a great day, and it's something that is a day I cherish for sure.
As you started to have success, obviously winning the MVP in 2013 and your first All-Star season being in 2011, your platform increased and you had a lot of eyeballs on you. How did you handle that and use that platform, even from a faith perspective, on understanding that there's a different amount of people now that you can impact, you know, in essence, for God? What was that like as you saw your platform increase?
Oh, you know what? With the help of a lot of people, I started to also realize, you know, given this game, the talent that God blessed me with, I can use these talents and I can use them for the good, the greater good. And knowing that God blessed me to be a baseball player, I knew that I could be something even bigger. And so I used the platform that I had, and I went out there and I tried to make a difference. You know, and you know, I looked up to Roberto Clemente, someone who was an ambassador for the game. I'm a pioneer, a guy who lost his life helping others. You know, he was someone I aspired to be like. And, yeah, so, you know, that's using the platform, being a baseball player, that's great, and I definitely enjoy that. But I also understand that I can be, you know, a bigger difference on the field and off. And so I use that to my advantage. And yeah, just try and be an example for the next person and for whoever's watching.
A couple more questions here with Andrew McCutchen on the podcast. So you mentioned your son being born and becoming a dad, and you proposed, I know, to your wife Maria back on the Ellen DeGeneres show 5-6 years ago. What's it been like these last few years and some of the lessons that you've learned, not only being a husband, but also now being a dad and the responsibility that comes with that?
Oh, yeah, man. I started to learn, man. You know, fast forward, me and Maria, my wife, we look at each other sometimes every time we have a kid, and we go, man, what did we do with our time when we didn't have a kid? You know, like, we always joke about that. But, I mean, it's great. I understand that I have a responsibility as a husband, as a father, to lead and be an example, to be the leader of the house, to show my son who God is, and to let him know how important it is to have a God in his life. You know, and be able to do that for my wife, and lead in different ways. So I understand the responsibilities there for myself, but at the same time, you know, the biggest accountability partner I feel like that I can have is my wife. And, you know, it's great to have someone like that in your life who you can always go to regardless of, you know, what you're going through on the field. Like, she doesn't look at you as a baseball player. She looks at you as, you know, you're my husband, you know, and that's amazing to be able to have that. And, yeah, man, it's great.
What's been the greatest lesson now as we wind down the last couple questions here? You've been a baseball player for a decade now, Major League Baseball player. If a kid came up to you or even somebody from the minors or somebody in spring training and said, Cutch, what's the greatest lesson that you've learned as a Major League Baseball player? What would you say?
Everyone's watching. That's the biggest thing. So be an example for that one kid who may come to the game that day, and that may be the only time, the only interaction he may have with you. Everyone's watching. Be an example that you want your son, to follow after. So, it keeps me grounded. It makes me appreciate the game and enjoy it at the same time. And so I think that just keeps me where I need to be every single day I'm out there on the field. And, it just helps me cherish it every day.
I really appreciate your time here, Cutch. Last question, and we ask this to all of our guests here on the podcast. With the season that you're in right now in life, being a Philadelphia Philly, married, got a kid, what are you learning from God at this stage of your life right now? What has he been teaching you?
I believe God teaches me something every day. And I think one of the things he's teaching me is that, he has a bigger plan for me, not just as a baseball player, but as a father and as a husband. And it's starting to realize that, this game is amazing, but and it's important, and I realize that. But God is more important than the game. And one day this game is going to be over. You're not going to be playing it anymore. And so you got to realize what is most important. And I feel like my relationship with him is most. And so that keeps me level and leaning on him. And it frees me up to just be able to play the game that I love so much. So, it's something that I'm learning. And I continue to learn that every single day. Sometimes it can be hard and it's a struggle, but I know at the end it's all worth it.
He is Andrew McCutchen of the Philadelphia Phillies. Cutch, we really appreciate your time here on the podcast, and best wishes for a great 2019 season, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
And many thanks to Andrew McCutchen, the 2013 National League MVP and Philadelphia Phillies outfielder, for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. A lot to be excited about in 2019, a fresh start for him, a new contract for the next 3 years, and man, that Phillies team is loaded with talent. It'll be fun to watch that National League East this year and see what comes from it with the Braves, who won last year. The Mets got a nice team and a great starting pitching staff. The Phillies are obviously loaded. The Nationals still have a nice ball club, even though they lost Bryce Harper. So the National League East is going to be a lot of fun to watch in 2019, and Andrew McCutchen is hoping to be a big part of that with this Philadelphia Phillies ball club. And if you're not familiar with Cutch on social media, give him a follow on Twitter. He's at the Cutch22, at the Cutch22. Make sure you tag him. Let him know that you heard his interview on the Sports Spectrum podcast. And I really liked his answer to the question about the lesson that he would share with a young player coming up in the minor leagues or even a young player in spring training. His answer of everybody's watching, I thought was really, really poignant, and something that as believers we need to remember too, that everybody is watching. Not everybody necessarily cares about every single detail, but if you're going to live your life as a follower of Christ and live that out publicly, people are watching. People want to see if there's any fruit to that root, if you're genuine about it, or if you're just living for yourself or not living for God everywhere you go and just kind of partaking in everything else that everybody else is doing in the world. So great answer from Cutch there. Really appreciate him. Give him a follow. Screenshot this podcast. Tag him. Tag us. And let him know, let others know about the stories on the intersection of sports and faith, particularly Andrew McCutchen. Many thanks to Andrew. Many thanks to Compassion International for sponsoring this podcast. Love having them as partners with us here at Sports Spectrum, the most trusted child development ministry in the world. Compassion working exclusively through the local church to bring an end to poverty. And what a great way to do that, by you and I taking part for $38 a month. Food, education, medical care, and vocational training. Compassion sponsors like you and me helping over 2 million children in 25 countries being released from poverty. Sponsor a child today. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum, compassion.com/sportspectrum, and release a child from poverty. Thanks for listening to this podcast. You can find us on social media at sports_spectrum. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us over at sportspectrum.com. That's the website. Check out all of our content, including our daily devotionals. Our podcast is there, videos, articles all day long on the intersection of sports and faith, and an opportunity for you to subscribe to our Sports Spectrum magazine. That's just $18. It's a great deal. $18 for an entire year. SportsSpectrum.com is the place to go and subscribe to the best deal around, the Sports Spectrum magazine. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. This is the Sports Spectrum Podcast. Have a great rest of your day.